Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. And Pam, I would ask you to take the roll call, seeing as we have some people on Zoom. So,
Sorry. Baraboo,
Present.
Friedlieb,
Present.
Paulson,
Present.
Beyondich,
Present.
Johnson,
Here.
Baranzelli,
Here.
Cuffey.
present. Thank you very much. We will call this committee meeting to order. We have 8 items on the agenda: personnel, finance, building and grounds, and other items of concern. And at the request of our city administrator and those who are attending in the audience today and who are likely on the line, I believe we have Bob Fitzgerald from Cross Anderson. Bob, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here, Mayor.
Good morning. And do we have anybody else also on the line today?
Steve Trudeau with Kraus Anderson is also on the line.
Thank you. So we have Steve Trudeau and Bob Fitzgerald from Kraus Anderson on the line participating in this meeting. Pam, did you get that information?
Yes. Is there anyone else present in the audience?
Yes, thank you. President of the audience is Scott Duranko from ASME Union Public Works. We have Eric Wedge from DSGW, Sherry Erickson, our finance director, Brian Lindsay, which is our city attorney, obviously, and Carl Anderson from Cross Anderson, and our Park and Rec director, Brian Silber. And, sir, are you one of our project managers? And your name, sir? Thank you. I'm sorry. I should have known that. I would see the name. So we also have Gary Francisco, the on-site manager for the Miners Project. So those are the individuals that are attending in the audience today. Did you get all that information, Pam?
I believe so. Scott Duranko, Eric Wedge, Ritzy Bennis, Brian Silber, Sherry Erickson, and Gary. I didn't quite catch the last name.
Gary Trudeau. Steve Trudeau.
Francisco. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Gary Francisco. I apologize. So you once again, we have on the phone Bob Fitzgerald from Kraus Anderson. We have Steve Trudeau from Kraus Anderson that's on the phone. And in the audience today is Don Francisco. I'm sorry. Gary Francisco from Kraus Anderson. Carl Anderson from Kraus Anderson, Brian Silber, our Park and Rec Director, Eric Wedge from DSGW, Scott Duranko from ASME Union, and our City Attorney, Brian Lindsay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start moving around on the agenda a little bit, starting on the MEC project. And Britt, I'll turn this committee whole agenda meeting over to you.
Number 2 is review the insurance quotes for builder's risk coverage for the MEC project, and I'm actually going to turn this over to Pam.
Yes, we did receive for the builder's coverage. One is from the insurance representative for Kraus Anderson, and the other is from our own insurance agent, Podpesker Insurance. The quotes are similar. Podpesker is about $800 higher than the quote from Kraus Anderson's agent.
Okay, thank you.
Other than that, they do have the same coverages, and Podpesker does have an additional, which is optional for loss of income. If something should occur during the construction period and we had events scheduled, or if the project gets extended, then there's coverage for those events that we would lose revenue on.
Okay, thank you. So we'll look for comments from the council regarding the two quotes, one from Carl Sanders and the other from our insurance agency, Podpesker, with Podpesker Agency being approximately $800 less than the quote from Carl Sanderson. $800 more. I'm sorry, Podpesker is $800 more. Carl Sanderson $800 more than Kraus Anderson, and with the addendum on there that there's some additional coverage in the event the project is delayed or there's a loss of income with respect to revenues from the miners as a result of this project. So them being similar in nature, I'm looking for some questions, comments, and direction from the council. First of all, those who are present today. First, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Britt or Pam, can you explain how we got to this point and now we need insurance now? Like, why wasn't this part of the original plan, that kind of stuff?
This was part of the plan, was we were responsible for the builder's risk insurance, and we really didn't need it till the building started being constructed. We need it now. The building's going to start being constructed, and so now we need this insurance.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Paulson, any questions about the two quotes?
No, not at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beyondich?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baraboo?
Yeah, just Britt or Pam, refresh us the total costs. These are what, a yearly policy? Is that correct? Or is this a total project? Or is this a total project?
Pam?
What? I didn't hear the question.
Okay, one more time, Councillor Baraboo, please.
Got my mouth right on the mic, Pam, so I don't know what's going on, but I want the cost between the two, what the total cost is. Is this a yearly policy or is this for the full project cost on this policy?
This would be from, let's see, June 1st to 10/29/21, and the cost is $31,308 on the Podpesker quote and $30,450 on the Kraus Anderson quote.
Okay, with that designation, since it falls within the percentages, we can go out. We didn't really have to go out for cost and bids on this project because it's less than what needs to be. This can be considered, in my book, a professional service based on what our policies have been. I'm going to recommend, I'm going to move that we authorize the Podpesker Agency for this insurance since they're local and we have hands-on right here in the local community. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Councillor Baraboo to award the insurance for the MEC project to the Podpesker Agency. And what is that amount?
31,308.
For $31,308. Is there support?
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Councillor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Friedlieb.
I would just like to know from Carl Anderson's perspective if it's common practice for you to insure yourselves and what kind of concerns that would raise for the city to have their own contractor insuring themselves as opposed to an independent party such as Podpesker.
Well, I think, well, I'll let Carl answer it because you are our employee, actually. So, Carl, would you please answer Councillor Friedlieb's question? Carl Anderson from Kraus Anderson, Pam.
McGorn.
What did I say?
Anderson. That's okay.
Carl. I'm sorry.
Could you make sure the mic's
One of those
on, Carl?
weeks. To my knowledge, yes, that is common practice within our company. It's actually, the insurance is held, we're more or less a broker, and Travelers Insurance is the insurance agent that would be carrying the policy. Maybe Bob or Steve can help support that conversation and shed a little more light on that.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I heard the question, Mayor. This is Bob Fitzgerald.
The question by Councillor Friedlieb was He wanted to hear from Carl Anderson representatives regarding the proposal for insurance and how that works, where the insurance is being proffered by Carl Anderson to insure themselves. And he was wondering what's the difference between Carl Anderson insurance themselves and the city using an Apod guarantee to insure the city. So I think he was looking for that clarification. Is that correct, Councilor Friedlieb? That was the question that he had, Bob.
Okay. Well, Anderson Insurance is a sister company. We're all under Kraus Anderson Companies, Inc. So it's a sister company of ours. There's no conflict of interest there. That's a separate quote that's directly to the city. This particular insurance is just for the builder's risk. We will be carrying all of our other liabilities, insurances, and such through Kraus Anderson Construction.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Friedlieb.
So you do not anticipate any issues with being insured by a local independent agent?
Well, in actuality, Councilor, this building risk insurance is for the project. So yeah, common practice. So no problems there at all.
All right, thank you. I would support this motion then.
Okay, it was moved. Thank you for that clarification, Bob. Carl, thank you. It's been moved by Councilor Baraboo and supported by Councilor Friedlieb to award the insurance for the MEC project to local Podpesker agency. Is there further discussion? Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. The one question that I do have is this on top of the budget that we have already approved, or is this included?
This was included in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Beyondich, any questions or comments?
No further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and supported. Pam, did you get the motion?
Yes, I did, Mayor. Thank you.
It's been moved and supported to award the insurance coverage for the MEC project beginning June 1st and through the end of October at the completion of the project. And the award is to the Podpesker agency. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, please, Britt.
And then we're going to jump down to item number 5, discuss the exterior materials for the MEC, and we have Eric Wedge from DSGW here.
Eric? And Councilor Paulson, are you available to see the proposals here that's being proffered by DSGW for the exterior materials of the MEC? I know you had some questions about that.
I am not able to see at this time, but I can schedule a time to meet with Eric.
Okay, and well, we can leave them out here too, Eric, can we not? Yeah, we can leave them here in the council chambers, Councilor Paulson. You can come and take a gander.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Let me turn on.
Pam, can you hear me?
Yes. That was good.
Thank you.
Right there. Don't move.
I'll try not to move. I think I was brought here because bid package number 1 was awarded, and we have the precast concrete samples for review for you today. So I have a drawing in front of me, And I will pass this out. There are no decisions that have to be made today. It's just an explanation of where the different materials are. So I'll go first with the big, large arena box. And that would be the two drawings on the bottom of the page. It was previously selected by this council that we would go with the white precast for the arena boxes. So what you would see in front of you would be the different colors of architectural precast. So we have the smooth that would be in the accent stripes. We have the exposed aggregate, which would be on the lower stripe. And then the medium, the acid washed, would be the secondary stripe. So this would be the color of the arena box. There were several samples that were presented before, but this is what Wells, who was awarded the concrete, will proceed with shop drawings with. Do we have any questions on the arena box main precast panels?
Eric, of course, we're not making a decision right now, so the other councils have the opportunity to take a look. So we're discussing it at this point?
Correct.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. Does anybody, any councilor that's currently sitting in the room have any questions? Councilor Paulson and Councilor Paulson, these will be available. We're just discussing it, and they'll be presented on the table for us to take a look at to make a decision. And we would need to make that decision when?
I'm going to defer to Steve or Bob on the phone from Kraus Anderson, because the typical process will be the contracts have been awarded. The precast contractor will send precast shop drawings to DSGW and our structural engineer for review and approval. And then we will get back, we will sign off of them for fabrication. So if Steve or Bob or Carl could give us some advice at when the precast shop drawings, we anticipate seeing them.
Okay, I would ask Carl to come forward for that. The question I would have is that to allow Councilor Beyondich and Councilor Paulson to come in and take a look, and maybe anybody else who might be interested in there from the design team's perspective, by next Tuesday's council meeting, would that be adequate? Would that be reasonable, Carl?
Yeah, I believe that would be appropriate. It would be good to make a decision by then, because these items are somewhat of a critical item in that schedule flow. So if it can be made by next Tuesday, that would help the project with staying on schedule. Yes.
Yeah, I think it can. I just want to ensure that the other councilors who are participating by Zoom will have the opportunity to weigh in and make that decision by the next council meeting. So that's acceptable. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Please continue. Wait, excuse me. Any other councilor have a question or comment before Eric moves forward? Councilor Freely.
Just for the sake of conversation, I mean, the predominant color is then plain gray, and which seems kind of bland to me when most of that is. I see some highlighting though. Are those seam lines, or are those highlighting that would be in the concrete at the top, the upper portion?
Are you talking about these lines, Councilor
What kind of like aesthetic additions, or?
It would be this, but it would be like this deep groove, so it's a deep shadow line.
That are vertical?
There'll be seams every 10 feet in the panel, so you'll see that. But then these are relief angles that are cut just similar to what you see right here in this sample.
So the angles give you kind of an aesthetic breakup of the plain.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And that was our only option, or there were other options?
I will bring the other options. It's an infinite number of options. We can go with brown, we can go with red, we can go with gray, but the past samples that were reviewed by the previous council and committees, the sample that we received was too pink or too salmon colored.
I do recall that, yes. Okay.
So it was decided that this was the desired sample. If this is not the desired look or sample, I can have Wells bring something different if you would like to see a different color. But I'd like to hold that conversation till we go around the balance of the building.
Yeah, I'm just, from my own personal standpoint, that has nothing to do with anybody else. It seems kind of benign and not particularly aesthetically pleasing, but that's just from my personal perspective at this point.
And I will tell the council that we were also working within a budget. So this is a more budget-friendly exterior than what maybe we would have preferred or dreamed up to have.
Sorry, that's what I was going to ask, if there's cost differential for the varying types of building materials. Apparently there is significant differences.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So if you look across the street from the Government Service Center, that is all an architectural precast panel, and that's the similar construction type that we will be utilizing for your arena.
Okay, thank you. Okay, please continue, Eric, with the rest of the presentation.
So then we get to the convention center. And this is probably where the discussion really was aligning around the confusion the last time we brought samples here, is we have a southwest elevation, or the plaza elevation, and that material will be, that faces out to the plaza, and on the lower level of the convention center meeting rooms is a product that's being bid in bid package 2. In bid package 2, it's called Nichiha, and it's basically a fiber cement panel. And we don't have to pick a color here today because all 4 of these colors are a standard color from Nichiha. So I'll hold up each sample really quickly, but I think this is what some of the past Councillor Paulson was looking for when she said, I thought it was more of a fiber cement type of siding. And there is a lighter gray sample, but again, matching this with this, I think we want to bring more of these warmer tones in. And again, we're not picking the color here today. We'll pick the color after the release of bid package 2. We can make some recommendations though, but I think the other part of this conversation is truly has to do with the south and the east side. So we have this canopy that happens in front of the convention center. And then we go along to the east side, which is your patio side. And that was going to be a combination of thin brick, similar to what's at the St. Louis County Government Service Center. And this was our original proposal of brick, which was this red, brown, kind of rusticated brick that would happen on the east side of the convention center. So on the east side, brick, and on the west side, fiber cement siding. So for example, we might want to look at utilizing this sample for the fiber cement siding. Now I did bring some alternate bricks that could be looked at. Because I think that was where there were some comments that that wasn't the preferred color. So I got, there's more of a salt and pepper looking brick. And I'm not a fan of this, but I'm bringing it as a sample. And then previously we had talked about some darker black bricks. And again, it was determined that it probably looks too dark and ominous. And more of that taconite colored brick or pellet kind of looking brick was another option that was brought to the council previously that was not really the desired look. But what that would look like would be more like this east elevation option B. It kind of has that gray on gray look with the brick rather than the red on gray.
I have a question for you, Eric. So, we've seen these before, right? And so my question is, you have a design team that's made up of our Park and Rec Commission, our Park and Rec Director, DSGW with some input from Kraus Anderson, looking at the cost-benefit analysis and what the budget brings forward. So my question then would be, is the design team, which includes those representatives that are on the Park and Rec Commission and those who, the citizen representatives, have they had an opportunity to review these things and make recommendations with respect to color scheme?
I'm going to turn that over to Brian Silber, because I believe previously this precast was selected by that design team, and this brick pattern, color and pattern was picked by the design team.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
And yes, the Park and Rec Commission members on our design team have all reviewed these, and these were their recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much. And please, Jeff, continue. Thank you, Eric.
I think that's all that was really on my agenda today, is that we do need, by next Tuesday, the precast color sample approved and a brick color sample approved. And if these are not acceptable and we need to get other samples made, it will take some time, so we probably won't be able to make a decision on Tuesday, but we would probably like to bring those alternative colors to the next committee of the whole meeting for approval at that meeting.
Okay, thank you. So what I'd like to see us do is make a list and identify the color schemes that were selected by the design team. So when the other counselors come in, or somebody else who has a concern about it, can see what the design team selected. So if you could just have a little, just to identify, put a little post-it on it in there, approved by the design team, whatever the case may be, that would help considerably. And from my perspective, I have preferences, but I defer to, the design team to make those determinations. I think we all have input about that and have color schemes available, and I would like Councillor Paulson and Councillor Beyondich the opportunity to come and take a look at it and then see what they think, and then also they'll be able to recognize what was selected by the design team, so we have, we have the clarity in moving forward. So, could we do that?
I'll make myself available for the councilors that can't be present today anytime between now and next Tuesday to review this with me on an individual basis.
Okay, I just want to make sure that, we all know what the design team selected moving forward, because you put in all this work, all this effort, made all this these decisions based upon what you think is the best color scheme by recommendations, and now it's up to the council to give their input and recommendations. And I would want to make sure that all the councils have the opportunity to look at what's here, look at what was selected by the design team, and then make a determination. Hopefully we'll be able to have that all clarified by the next council meeting, unless the council decides at the next council meeting they want to see more samples, and maybe those two individuals and maybe other councilors can meet with you if they don't think these are acceptable materials. I think they are. I'm good with the design team moving forward, but I think we all have an individual opportunity to voice our opinion and recommendations. So thank you, Eric. Councillor Bearable.
Yeah, Eric, there's 3 different panels that you showed us for this design, is that correct? Or just 2?
For the precast?
Yeah.
There were probably 5. I
mean the ones you just showed us in combination. You showed us 3 right off the bat. Those all 3?
Correct. There's 3 materials. There's the precast, there's the brick, and there's the fiber cement. So yes, 3 materials.
Okay. I'm in agreement with the mayor. We had all these individuals, design team people. Look, I'm perfectly fine with those 3 originals that you showed us on there. I think they'll be, how shall I say it, eye-catching enough that we won't have a problem with what's on the outside of that building. So I'm fine with it right now. So I'm just giving you my opinion now. I don't like those darker colors at all.
And so this, thank you, Councillor Bearable. And again, we'll. Right? I mean, we'll all take a look at it and make sure that the Councillor Paulson and Councillor Beyondich have an opportunity to review what we're reviewing today. So thank you, Eric, very much.
Thank you kindly.
Okay.
Mayor, may I make one?
Anybody? Oh, yes, Councillor Bearable.
Just one more comment.
Sure.
This is a critical part of this to get this stuff done and ordered. We do not want, with the short time frame on this project, a big delay at all because of a color scheme thing. So we need to make a decision, I believe, by next Tuesday so we can get this out to make sure that there's enough quantity available for this project. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, yes, thank you, Councillor Bearable. Councillor Paulson, any comments, questions?
No, I just want to clarify with Eric. There will be a potential like facade in the plaza area. Isn't that correct after you and I had a conversation?
Eric?
I guess you have to clarify what you mean by facade for me, but yes, there is the fiber cement, the wood-looking siding that is going on the east side of the convention center. It rotates to basically the front entrance around the corner, and it does wrap the clear story of the convention center side. Does that answer your question?
Okay, and yeah, it does. And maybe I'll just send you some images that I was envisioning, and you can let me know if kind of I'm on the right track.
That would be good.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Paulson. Councillor Beyondich.
I am good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else, Eric?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, Britt?
And the next item we'll go to is item number 6, the request for consideration of the MEC change order management process. And I'm going to turn this over to Bob Fitzgerald or Steve Trudeau to discuss, or Carl.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Carl. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
This is Harold.
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
So first, thank you, everyone. And, you know, really what I wanted to do is to, a couple of comments first. As good as everybody is on the team, the council in their planning and preparation, the design team in their planning and preparation, Krause Anderson's input, our three-legged stool is solid. But as we all know, it is construction and there is the human factor. So we have processes in place to address those and any necessary changes that may arise in the construction process. Now, within the contract, there's already set or prescribed methods to handle that. I've outlined those in items 1, 2, and 3 within the letter that was within your packet. It's also important to note that all changes are tracked and submitted to the council for full approval and formal change order processing, typically on a monthly basis. And then this is cross-referenced against any contingency available to make sure we're working within that overall project budget as well as the construction budget. So really what we're looking at today is a request for things that are more of an eminent nature. Item number 3, which is called a construction change directive. These are items that come up that cannot wait, quite frankly, for the formal approval process and or time adjustment before proceeding without adversely affecting the critical path, schedule, or optimum price or cost. It's like an unforeseen condition such as contaminated soils, etc. Typically on a project like this, especially in the public sector, what the governing body does is sets a dollar amount cap or authorizing or pre-approval cap for their owner's rep to allow the work to proceed. What we would do is give a rough order of magnitude, a rough estimate of what it would, and then say if your owner's representative had the authority to then say, okay, let's go, let's get the final pricing. We don't want to adversely affect the critical path or the optimum cost. So that's really what we're asking about today is, would the council consider establishing a maximum pre-approval cap amount for the owner's representative, which I believe is Britt, within the contract, to keep things moving along and not adversely impact the schedule or cost. Again, very important to point out that anything that would exceed this maximum amount would go to council for a special meeting or an authorization for the designated owner's rep to approve or adjust the change in the work being sought. I want to reiterate that everything would still be tracked, submitted to the council, full approval, former change order processing, and referenced against available dollars to make sure that we're not exceeding budget. Typically on a project of this magnitude, you see them up to, say, $50,000. On average, they're in that $15,000 to $25,000 range. Obviously, a very significant project, very significant dollars at risk here. So the request to the council would be to approve a cap for the owner's representative for things that would fall under item number 3, the construction change directives.
Okay, thank you, Bob. And I know that right now our spending authority without council approval by our city administrator, who is our designated representative, is $15,000, as you iterated in your presentation. So we're looking for a potential to discuss from the council level the option for our city administrator to be able to make decisions on an emergency basis, that things have to be done immediately for unforeseen circumstances. It's not a regular course of business. To have that authority up to $50,000, I think that would be a discussion that our city administrator would have with Carl Sanderson and with Brian Silber, our Park and Rec director, to go through those and make that determination. And so I think the proposal here is for us to consider the option under those emergency exigent circumstances, the authority for the city administrator, who is our representative, to have the spending authority under those restricted in conditions from $15,000 up to $50,000. So I think that's the discussion here today. So first we'll move to Councillor Paulson for any questions or comments about that.
A question that I have is, do we have in place already a certain percentage for those cost overruns or change orders? And is this above and beyond that, or is this just allowing within that context or that figure up to 50,000?
It's a great question.
It's going to allow. Go ahead, Bob.
In the established budget.
Yeah, it's within the established budget.
Okay, could you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
Bob?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, thank you. It would be to keep the project moving along, as you had commented on, all within the existing project budget. The overall budget carries an owner contingency as well as a construction contingency. So it would be drawn from those dollars.
Very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson. Councillor Beyondich?
No, I think that also answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Councillor Baraboo.
Yeah, this is a standard thing in big, huge construction projects like this. I have no problem with Britt, along with consultation from our Park and Rec Director, Brian Silber, to authorize the $50,000. That will not affect the overall budget on this project with the contingency, so I don't have an issue with it.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Baraboo. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to suggest that we add Sherry into that as the finance director. I think if Sherry and Brian and Britt all agree, I think that's a very good representative of our city up to $50,000. And then it would come to us at the next meeting for, but I think having those 3 people involved will really provide balance.
Okay, inclusive in that discussion to approve with the authority given to our city administrator, will include our finance director in that as well. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Freely.
I would make a motion to approve this process then, as has been discussed.
Okay, Councillor Freeby makes a motion to allow the authority for our city representative, which is Britt C. Bendis, in conjunction with our Park and Rec Director, Brian Silber, Carl Sanderson, and our city finance director to make a decision of spending to raise the cap from the $15,000 that is currently authorized up to $50,000. Is there support?
I'll support, Mayor.
Support by Councillor Baraboo. Pam, did you get that motion?
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Further discussion, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to say that I think we need to stipulate that after we hit that $50,000, whether it's $5,000, $10,000 things, or if it's $150,000, they would need to come back for an additional $50,000 authorization. I want to make sure we're checking this as it goes along. And then that hopefully helps Kraus-Anderson to realize that there's not free range, that they just can't keep authorizing these other emergency type expenditures. So I would like that to be part of it, that it's after they reach the $50,000, they come back to us for another additional $50,000 worth of changes.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarification purposes, I think the motion is to, if it's a one-time, if it's a $50,000 need, say for example, there's a mobilization of some contracts that have to come in, and during the course of that mobilization, they have their people on ready to go, and all of a sudden they find something that there needs to be a delay, and for them to demobilize could be a significant cost. So to allow that, so say we give the authority to our city administrator and the staff to authorize that, and say it is $50,000. I think it was the motion to give the authority to $50,000 regardless of what the issue was. So if it was one was $50,000 and then another one comes up that's $25,000, that we don't have to come back and give her the authority for the $25,000 or reauthorize the $50,000, because it's the authority that's granted for a city administrator, who in turn would make sure that we were all notified of this expenditure. So what you're asking, Councillor Johnson, is an amended motion by Councillor Freely and the second by Councillor Baraboo to cap any expenditure at $50,000 and not allow any additional expenditure without council approval. Is that correct?
I don't know that that's accurate, Mayor.
Okay,
what I'm saying, and Brett, I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say, but so if there's one change order that's $50,000, that's fine, but there could be several small change orders that could add up to $50,000. I can't imagine them happening that quickly, but the thought I had was that it would become a $50,000 cap of change orders, however many fit in there. And then once they hit that $50,000, the staff would come back to us and say, we've hit that $50,000 cumulatively. We'd like to be able to do 50,000 more if we need to, because my concern is that if 10 $50,000 change orders come in 2 weeks, that's an awful lot of money that we've given the staff permission to do. Not that I don't trust them, but they need to have our support through each one of those steps. And Britt, if you could interpret maybe from your point of view what I'm trying to say, I'd appreciate that.
I think what Councilor Johnson is saying is that he's looking for a total of cumulative or one-time of up to $50,000 to try to keep this project in budget. The contingencies are there, but a $50,000 here, $50,000 next week, and a $50,000 week after could blow this whole thing out of budget proportionately.
Well, so then, if I understand this correctly, then the motion could be amended that you currently have the spending authority up to $15,000.
Correct.
So my question is that $15,000 per event, or is that a total of $15,000?
Per event.
Per event, right?
Correct.
So I think that was the goal and objective here, to give it per event, because we have enough mechanisms in place, checks and balances, to allow that. So right now, you don't. It's not a cumulative up to $15,000. You have the authority right now, $50,000 per event. Correct. Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnson, anything further?
I feel like it's being convoluted with what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
I'm looking at, for this project, a $50,000 top, whether it's one event or 20 events. And when they hit the $50,000, then they have to come back and say, we need another 50 and this is why. And my point is not about trusting the staff, it's about holding Kraus-Anderson accountable, because I don't want it to be too easy for them to pass that through and all of a sudden they're coming to the staff saying, well, we really need this $49,000 change order this week. And then 2 days later they come back and say, we need this $49,000 change order, and all of a sudden we're at $98,000 in a week of change orders. And I think it'll really help us hold them accountable to keeping it within. And that's really where I'm going with this, is the accountability for the construction people. I mean, we just dealt with a big issue with the deconstruction and that change, and I want to help them be accountable that it really, we want to keep this moving. Let's try to be proactive and let's look forward. And I know they're doing their best, but again, as we've had in meetings before, this is a way I think we can do it. And I think that then also allows the staff to be confident that they have the support of the city council. And if they do too many $49,000 approvals in a month, we can't come back at them and go, shame on you, you shouldn't have done that. I just think it's a double check for support for the staff as well. So it wouldn't slow anything down. It would just keep the benchmarks there for us. And that's where I'm at. I'd see this as a separate issue from the $15,000 authorization they already have. This is about the construction of the MEC and moving forward with that.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Baraboo?
Yeah, I have an issue with that, Councilor, to be honest with you. We have to respect our staff that we put together to see this. If they start seeing jumps 50,000, 50,000, they have the ability to stop it right then and there and call a special meeting of the city council to authorize, extended another 50,000. I don't expect them to authorize 50, 50, 50 like that, but if there is an emergency that they can't wait in a construction project, you run into something where the mayor's correct, and we've seen it happen where mobilization costs, somebody comes in to do part of the construction and something happens in an emergency, they stop that mobilization cost, take their equipment back, and then it costs you that 50 again to remobilize. So I think the mechanism in place, I can't support being micromanaging what we're doing with this authorization. That's what it amounts to. We need to trust our staff that they can stop this. And Britt, I think you're going to agree that you guys would do that if we see the cost starting to rise too high.
And I think part of the motion, with due respect to Councilor Johnson's comments, that we have the mechanisms in place where if our team, City Administrator Britt C. Bennis and our Park and Rec Director and our Finance Director says, wait a minute, now this is not something that we want to, even if it's an emergency situation, they could say no, and we could call a special meeting. And if it delays things, it does. So the question that I have, Britt, are you comfortable with this authority? I mean, would you think that you would have the option of some latitude or there as the motion stands now?
I would be more comfortable with the cumulative, like Councilor Johnson's suggesting.
Okay, all right.
Simply because I don't want to, not that I think that the staff and I mean, I know Sherry's probably cringing over there. She is cringing over there, actually. To repeatedly have that, and it's not necessarily Crouse Anderson, having a contractor come to me and Sherry repeatedly saying, I need this, I need this, I need this, is what's going to happen at $49,000 a pop, and I just foresee this being a bad situation, putting us in that, if I have to push back and say, no, I really need the council to approve this, they're going to say, why? You have the authority.
Well, you have the authority to say yes, and you have the authority to say no.
Correct, but I need a basis to stand on, too. I can't say yes today and then tomorrow say no without a reason. So I think the cumulative is a little more better approach. It gives us, $50,000 is a lot of money personally, and we can throw a meeting together in 3 days if it's coming down that we know this one's going to be a little over 50. We need to talk, that kind of a thing. But
well, I just want to make sure your comfort level is there, in that if you're comfortable with that, fine. If you're not comfortable with that, then we want to make sure that you're comfortable with making the decisions based upon that. So, Councilor, anybody else have anything? Councilor Freelieb?
I think we're kind of overthinking this, in my opinion. There's a recommendation made by the general contractor for a construction change order directive up to $50,000. And any and all change orders, whether up to $50,000 and or below, cumulatively would come within the contingency percentage that's already within the budget. So that's the number we would be most concerned about, is like, if that contingency is 3%, it's about $1 million. I mean, we can keep track of where we're at with regard to those change orders relative to the amount we've budgeted per se for those kinds of events to occur. And then just from a perspective of a customer, so to speak, I mean, change orders can be frustrating when a $32 million contract is signed. Like, just for example, the other day we had a change order of about $2,200 by concrete contractors that were pouring, I think, 2 different types of concrete that were going to be connected in some fashion. And they said, hey, it would be a good idea if you did the rebar to interconnect both of those pads. And I was like, how could that not have been previously determined that that would have been advisable to do by construction or, concrete contractors? So, I mean, those are some of the frustrations that we have. It's like, sometimes these change orders come up and they're like, how could that not have already been considered prior to moving forward with that? So, and I'm assuming that you will be considering every contingency prior to moving forward, and this process will give you some expediency to make decisions to continue moving forward with the project without those kind of holdups. And like I said, the $50,000 does give latitude. You have 1, 2 people, 3 people involved to make that decision, and the bottom line is the contingency percentage staying under that amount within our budget. So I just don't want to overthink it too much. I think this is put in place for the expediency of moving forward with a project when sometimes you can't wait to continue and a decision has to be made now prior to the purchase order being processed, so to speak. So I stand by my motion that we would take the recommendation of Kraus Anderson to move forward with this construction change order directive up to the $50,000 with those 3 people involved.
Okay, thank you. And just clarification on the $2,200, it wasn't the concrete contractor that asked for the change order. They suggested that this rebar be put in. We didn't put it in the bid. They bid it based upon where our bid package was. And then all of a sudden they recognized, well, we really should put some rebar in here. It wasn't in the bid package, and we'll do it the way you want it to, but this is our suggestion. And we, when we put the bid package out, probably should have put that in there, but we did not do that. So it was a change order that was recommended but not required. So I think, and then to your point, I concur. I'm going to stand by my motion or my support for the current motion as stand, but I do understand Councillor Johnson's issue and the uncomfortable or the one in the validation from the city administrator about this. But we're giving the approval now. If we wait, we give the approval later. For me, it's just give them the authority to do that. I think we have a good check and balance system in place right now. So we're falling within the contingency, keeping track on budget. That's what our city administrator, that's what our city finance director, that's what our Park and Rec Commission, our design team, our Park and Rec director, in conjunction with DSGW and Kraus Anderson to make sure this gets done. So it's not Kraus Anderson's decision. It is a decision made by us, giving the approval and the authority to do that. And this is an emergency circumstance. This isn't a regular course of a change order. If a change order needs to be done and, they expect something to happen in a few weeks, we can call a council meeting or put that on the agenda. We can do that. But these are emergency circumstances. And if it's up to $50,000, and we don't anticipate that's going to be the case, but it is. Councillor Bearbow, do you want to please continue, and then we'll go to the other councillors?
I just want to ask one other question, and it's kind of slipped my mind, and either Steve or Bob, can you answer this question? What is the % of contingency on this project? I kind of blew it by my mind here. What is the percentage on this project? You know, Carl?
It was in the budget, we were carrying 3%.
I'm sorry, what was it?
3%.
Okay, that's what I thought, but, so there is a big leeway. And at any time that this doesn't work out, our individuals can call it and have a special meeting, like I said, to talk about it. I don't want it delayed. This is a fast-track project. Britton, I have I've worked with you for how many years? 20 years now or better? I trust you. I've worked with you for a ton of years, Barry, and Brian is new, but I still trust Brian's judgment.
Yeah, so it's a check and balance with the, with the notification of the council. This is moving forward, so we're all under the understanding. So let's go to Councillor Paulson. Any questions or comments about the motion on the floor, Councillor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Baraboo asked one of the questions that I had. And so if 3% of approximately 38 million, it's 1.14 million, is that correct?
Yeah, right around there.
Okay, right around there. And then, so I guess I'd like to ask Kraus Anderson, what is the actual ask? Because on number 2, in the document in our pack, under the request for proposal, it's issued by the architect. Sorry, there's a big echo for us here on the phone, but issued by the architect to the contractor for potential changes in the scope of work that are requested by the owner and do not have an immediate impact on the critical path schedule. In other words, the pricing may be accepted or rejected, and the contractor shall not proceed with the change in work until fully approved by the owner and executed via contract change order. And then there's an example if we wanted to do an upgrade. So part of this, number 2, is not like immediate, but number 3 is immediate. So I'm wondering what is the ask here by Kraus Anderson, and does this motion suffice to Britt's comfort level and Sherry's comfort level for management? Because technically each RFP that goes out, whether it's a subcontractor or not, could go up to a $50,000 change order and stay within that $1.14 million contingency. So I just want some clarification on there.
Bob?
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Paulson. The $50,000 request for the pre-approval authorization is in relation to the item number 3. That's the more eminent, the construction change directives that could have an adverse effect on the critical path schedule and or on costs. And the example is the unforeseen site conditions such as contaminated soils, that you have to maintain the schedule and then thus costs and budget. It becomes critical that you keep things moving along. And then that's where that dollar cap would come into. That's the request, is the dollar cap that's more directly related to the CCDs or construction change directive.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification, because I was a little confused because number 2 is not emergent, number 3 is.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson. Councillor Beyondich.
Thank you. No, I think it's been clarified as you're going along for me. So right now I don't have a question. Thank you.
Okay, Pam, would you please read back the motion?
Okay. Moved by Councillor Freedleaf, supported by Councillor Baraboo, to approve the CCD for a maximum of $50,000 per incident, and allow the City Administrative Finance Director and Parks and Recreation Director to review the change order and approve without council approval.
Okay, that is the motion. Moved and supported. Further discussion. Eric Wedge from DSGW. Eric?
I would just like to add to the discussion so that maybe we can take some of the burden off of city staff, is that, as Bob explained at the last meeting, there's a 3-legged stool. There's the architecture team, which has a separate contract with the city. There is the Kraus Anderson has a separate contract with the city, and then there is the city as part of that 3-legged stool. So every change order that we would be looking for Britt to execute without council authority would be thoroughly reviewed by the DSGW design team and the engineers that have been put in place in our team, and we would give a written notification to Britt, Brian, and Sherry that would say, we believe this change is reasonable and within industry standards of what we would expect for the cost. So I just wanted to clarify that I don't believe you're asking city staff to look at it blindly and not approve it. It will be reviewed earthwork by our civil engineer, SCH, mechanical, electrical items by our design team members of Obermiller Nelson, architectural items, structural items, et cetera, that come along throughout the nature of construction. And historically, that process has worked well on projects of this magnitude. So I just wanted to add that little bit of clarification, is that your design team has a separate contract that works for the city. We are not under Kraus Anderson's umbrella, and we are your advocate for this project, like we have been from the start.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Barnzelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Once that 50,000 is used up, they would have to come, but to us, it wouldn't?
No, that's the purpose of this motion.
Yeah, it comes out of the contingency, Carl, of the $1.4 million. If they had to go beyond the 50, for another 50, it would still come out of that contingency that's buried in the total package price. So there's money there that would not affect coming out of our local city budget because of the contingency.
And I think if the contingency is used up, which, I mean, then it becomes a budgetary issue where we would have to come back to the council for that. But that's what Councilor Johnson's concern is, but that's not the motion at this point in time.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so thank you. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Johnson.
So I will not be supporting the motion as it's written, because as we've been going through this process, there have been many times where Britt has said, no, this is what we need to do. And Kraus Anderson has specifically tried to push harder and push harder. And I think the point is that Britt wants the full weight of the council behind her to say, no, we've reached our $50,000, you need to wait. That's my interpretation, so I will not be supporting the motion as it is presented.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Okay, it's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
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 What?
Okay, motion fails. Roll call, please. Pam?
Beyondich?
Beyondich?
No.
Johnson?
No.
Baranzelli?
Yes.
Cuffey?
Yes.
Baraboo?
Yes.
Friedlieb?
Yes.
Paulson? Counselor Paulson?
We lost her.
Let's get her back. She's the last vote. Great, thank you.
Looks like she's back on, Pam.
I'm now on. I'm sorry. I got clicked off.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. There was further discussion. We voted, and you're the last one. Vote yes or no.
So the motion passes
Did she say yes?
4-3.
Well, it's spending, right? So I don't think it passes, but I'd like to ask the motion was 4-3 to approve this contingency for the expenditure up to $50,000. The motion was on a 4-3 vote. I'll ask our city attorney, Brian Lindsay, about that. I think our charter says in order to spend money, I'm not sure how that worded?
It isn't necessarily for spending any money. We're not asking to purchase anything at this moment. We're just asking for
The
authority.
authorization to spend it.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
very good.
We do have Brian here if Brian wants to jump in.
That motion can pass then? Brian, thank you.
Yes, I believe that would pass.
Okay, thank you. A motion passes 4-3. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll jump down to item number 7, approved project labor agreement for the MEC project. Again, Kraus Anderson on this one.
Thank you. If I could just preface it by saying that the bargaining unions, particularly one, had made an indication that during the normal course of projects that have occurred in the city of Virginia, that we've always had, for the most part, a project labor agreement with the bargaining units, with the trades. And in this particular case, there was a request for us to have a project labor agreement in place. There were some recommendations early on in this project a few years back where, it wasn't necessary for us to have one. I think historically we have. And so right now there's a request to put an addendum to ensure that we do have a project development agreement moving forward. And so I would look for Kraus Anderson for some information about that. I know that I had asked them to consider the project labor agreement along with our city administrator, because I got a call from the trades representatives, and I referred them to Kraus Anderson and to our city administrator moving forward. And I think Mr. Fitzgerald from Kraus Anderson and maybe some other staff members have had some conversation with one of the trade representatives with respect to that, and now it's been brought before the table to us for consideration. So I would ask Carl for any information you have with respect to this, or for Bob. Carl?
Sure, I'll refer to Bob. He was the one that had the conversations with the Allied Trades, and he has the most information.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As you had mentioned, Mayor, the mayor was approached by representatives of the Iron Range Building Trades Council for a request to implement a project labor agreement on the MEC. To give a little background, a little history, this was discussed several months ago and reviewed. And the recommendation at the time from legal counsel was that the city's standing resolution back to 2012, where it be prevailing wage, would suffice. That's how the documents were bid out under Bid Pack 1 and are on the street right now for Bid Pack 2. Subsequently, the Trades Council representative approached the mayor and then had a discussion with representatives of Kraus Anderson. They are in favor of a project labor agreement and would like to see that project labor agreement between the city and Building Trades Council made as an amendment.
Are you okay?
Made as an amendment to the bid packs that are on the street, as well as the contracts that will be issued on Bid Pack 1.
What's going on with these girls?
So, the short is, it's really, it's to the city and their desire want to enter into a project labor agreement. Kraus Anderson, as you know, is a union company. We've worked within and under several, many, I should say, project labor agreements. And if that's the desire of the council, we will do so on this one as well.
So my question to you, Bob, is having a project labor agreement, does that have any restrictions or have any adverse effect on the project moving forward?
Having a project labor agreement, would it have any adverse effect? No,
yes.
It should not have any adverse effects.
Thank you very much.
If you look at Bid Pack 1, for example, all of the contracts that, or all the bids that were the apparent lows and the contracts that we're looking to award were by union contractors, with the exception of the landscaping. The landscaping, we did invite several union contractors, and the only one that we got was from the Parent Low, which is a non-union firm. It's been indicated to us that the Building Trades Council is in conversation with that individual as far as signing up. But there should be no adverse effect. We've not experienced any adverse effect on previous contracts within the city of Virginia that we've completed under a PLA.
Thank you. And I know that I'll just defer to one experience in the metro where we had a big project moving on, and there was not a project labor agreement, it was a prevailing wage agreement, and when the bid packages went out for construction purposes, a non-union organization bid out under prevailing wage, and the concern was that even though they were paying the prevailing wage, the organized trades were concerned that they should have received it if it was prevailing wage. It was the same, and they were paying prevailing wage, but their bid was less than what the trades were. It created an issue and started, a conversation down that road and a picketing issue. And then, so by entering in the PLA, does that prevent that kind of a scenario from occurring? Bob?
I'm not sure that I caught all of that, but what it would do is it would not prevent non-union firms from bidding on the project. What it would do is it would be knowledgeable to them that this project is being delivered under a project labor agreement, and that they would need to sign the project labor agreement in order to complete the work.
Okay, and
did that answer your question?
It certainly does. Thank you for that. That made it a lot clearer than I was trying to disseminate. So thank you, Bob.
Yes.
Councilor.
The one thing that I would ask of council in their consideration is we are planning to put an addendum to the Bid Pack 2 documents out on the 4th. If you were to see your way to approving a project labor agreement for this, we could add that to the amendment, which is scheduled to go out on this Thursday.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. Councilor Baraboo.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with the project labor agreement. We have an area in Minnesota right now that needs construction and work badly up here for everything that's happened with this COVID-19. And you have supportive project labor agreements from big organizations. RAMS supports project labor agreements in their processes, and so do our representatives, I believe, of our district up here from our legislative bodies. So from everybody that I've talked to, they like the labor agreements, so I'm all for it.
Okay, I would like to ask our city attorney, Brian Lindsay, for some comments about that as far as project labor agreements go. And if we have a resolution that's currently under there where you pay the prevailing wage, is that a resolution that has to be rescinded or amended? Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think that putting this project labor agreement and our standing resolution are at any way in odds. I think we can have both, and I think that having reviewed the project labor agreement, the form document that's contained within the packet, I think it's acceptable, and I see no legal risk involved.
Thank you very much. Councilor Paulson, any questions or comments?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Beyondich?
I'm good as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that being said, no further comments or discussions from the council, and we don't have anybody audience that's representing the trades at this point in time with respect to this. So on the table is our consideration to put an addendum to bid package 2 and include the project labor agreement during the bid process. So I'm looking for action from the council.
Also move that, Mayor, just exactly what you said in your little conference right there, so I'll approve or make that motion.
Okay, motion by Councilor Baraboo to approve the project labor agreement as requested and include it as an addendum in bid package number 2 and any bid packages that moving forward. After consultation with our legal counsel, that this is something that will not have an adverse effect on moving forward. So a motion by Councilor Baraboo. Is there support? Support by Councilor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Mayor, this is Bob Fitzgerald with Krause Anderson Construction again. I know one of the requests from the Building Trades Council would be that the PLA would be implemented to bid as well. So I would defer to Brian Lindsay, the city attorney, on this, but I think that should be in the motion as well, that it impact just for the project, I guess is what I would say. And then we can take care of the mechanics of making the addendum and the then amendments to the Bid Pack 1 contracts.
So the motion on the floor and the second would be to allow the project labor agreement to be approved by the council for the MEC project. Okay, that would be the motion. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Pam, could you please read back that motion? I think there was a little addendum. I think I'll just repeat the motion. Oh, hang on a second. Discussion by Eric Wedge from DSGW. Eric?
Since we broke the project up into 3 projects, bid package 1, bid package 2 for the MAC, I think the motion should clearly state that it's also for Ewing's Field development. Ewing's Field development, bid package 1.
Okay, so let's clarify the motion that was made, that we approve the project labor agreement for bid package 1, bid package 2, and bid package 3. Eric?
Yeah, I have moved by.
Hang on a second. We got some more discussion here. Eric?
Sorry. MAC bid package 1, MAC bid package 2, and Ewing's Field redevelopment bid package 1. It's because we broke the project down into 3 funding sources.
Okay, Pam, would you please, what do you have there?
Moved by Councilor Barron, supported by Councilor Baronzelli, to approve the project labor agreement as presented for the MEC project as an addendum to bid package 1, 2, and Ewing Fields bid package 1 as requested by the labor union.
Okay, that seems
Building and Trades.
That seems to be correct. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everybody. So any further discussion before we vote? Councillor Paulson, do you have any further discussion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Beyondich?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Councillor Beyondich?
I'm sorry. Yes. Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda that we'll go back up to is item number 1, review the furlough status for Public Works. Number 1A, Public Works and Fire Department return to work of June 8th, 2020, and then the library return to work of June 15th, 2020, and this is coming from the Personnel Committee last Thursday.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say thank you to Kraus Anderson, for DSGW, and for city staff, and Bob Fitzgerald and Carl and Mr. Francisco about for your attendance here today, and I think we got things accomplished where we need to be done. So we appreciate your time. Before we move forward with the next item on the agenda, do you have any questions, comments to make for the council before we move on to the next agenda item?
No, Mayor, this is Bob Fitzgerald. Just say thank you, and as I mentioned before, we're looking forward to working with all parties on this, and looking forward to a successful and great project.
Well, thank you very much, and you guys take care. Have a great day, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda is looking at these furloughs. And like Britt has indicated, it did come out of recommendations from the Personnel Committee moving forward. So, Britt?
As I mentioned, we'd like to bring back the Public Works and Fire Department staff on June 8th and the library on June 15th. We were asked to provide the curbside library pickup service information that's in your packet, prepared by Brian Silber, and we do have a Park and Rec / Library Director Brian Silber here, and we also have in the audience Scott Duranko from AFSCME, if we have any questions.
Okay, thank you. I think the purpose of bringing back on June 8th was to give the opportunity to ramp back up, bring people back to work, and bringing these public works people back includes the to resume recycling in the city of Virginia as well. So
yes, starting June 8th, curbside recycling will be back if the furloughs are released.
If the furloughs are released, the public is to make that public aware that this is something that comes with bringing people back on the 8th from the furlough status. So thank you. I'm sorry, Councilor Johnson. Thank you,
Mayor. So are we looking for a motion to move forward with the release of the furloughs accordingly?
Yes, please, because this is, as the mayor discussed in Personnel Committee, this is an administrative function, but I want the council's backing to realize that Sherry and I feel that we are in a good situation financially. We have indicated from the county that they have gotten the majority of their taxes funds in, not as bad as everybody expected, is much better than we all anticipated, which is great. We expect to get that check or those funds the week of the 15th, Sherry. So this is timely. If we start with recycling on the 8th, we get the big promotion out this week. After this meeting, if it's approved, I'll start sending out news, radio, TV, Facebook, all kinds of recyclings back on ads. I know people graciously have been storing them, waiting for this to happen, so I appreciate everybody's patience with us. And then the 15th, we'll start with the curbside library services at the public library.
And is this one or two motions, Britt?
Just one would be fine.
Okay, so I will make a motion that we release the furloughs according to staff recommendations.
Moved by Councilor Johnson. Is there support? Support by Councilor Freely.
Support.
Okay, support by Councilor Freely and Councilor Paulson. Is there any further discussion, Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Britt, I got a message from one of the restaurants that has been doing, they've been continuing to recycle. Could we put some notes to the businesses that if they have a large amount of plastics in their back to contact Public Works directly, and maybe we could send a pickup truck to pick up? I know the one that contacted me does have quite they've been still being diligent in the recycling. So
I did drive by a business yesterday and noticed that they had a lot of plastic stored outside waiting for us to pick it up. So yes, I will make a note to commercial that if you have a large amount, to call us.
Okay.
We'll schedule something.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I think in addition to that, there are several residents that have been storing their recycling in their garage, trying to be proactive in doing that. So thank you, Councilor Johnson, for that.
And I think Scott from Public Works can attest that they're very well aware that there's going to be, that first 2 weeks are going to be very busy. There's going to be a lot of recycling, which is great. And we thank everybody for waiting and being patient with us. And that being said, will that trigger, well, it's not part of this motion about the county emptying their stuff on time. And last weekend was the first weekend that we did not have a problem with the county overflow at the drop-off site. So right. So this is it? Yeah, this week. Yeah. So okay, very good. Thank you. So moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Pam, did you have that motion?
I do, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, 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 and we're all an aye. No opposition? Motion is approved. Thank you. Can I ask if anybody in the council wanted to discuss the curbside pickup service from the library? The information was in your packet. Was there any questions or concerns from anybody while we have Brian here with us? For me, I think it's a good plan moving forward. It doesn't impede the traffic flow or the opportunity in the alleyway areas. The curbside recycling in the parking lot seems to make a lot of sense. I think it's a good plan. Councilor Beyondich, any further comments about that regarding curbside recycling and the location that was established by our interim director of the library?
No.
Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank Brian because it's pretty much everything that we did discuss at the Personnel Committee meeting, and I don't even know if you were there for the last half of it. So I appreciate that you're being mindful of employee safety, of the public safety, and just taking into consideration those recommendations, or, you know, I guess I would say recommendations that we gave you. So thank you so much. Okay, it's been moved and supported with some background music. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Johnson?
Yes, I just wanted to give a shout out to Brian, and I know the employees are ready to come back. And I don't remember reading, will fines continue to be waived as we move forward? Okay, I just want to clarify that for the citizens. I know we have a stack of books at our house, so appreciate that.
Hey, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councillor Bearable.
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned about the checklist process that they've got going on. If an individual doesn't have a way to go online and stuff, can they call and the staff do the checklist over the phone? Is that, because I didn't see that in the process here. Because there are some people that don't have computers and can't go online to do this, Brian.
Yes, the staff will be asking them if they have reviewed the checklist.
Okay.
That is intended for individuals to answer those questions privately and not share their answers with the staff, because we don't need to know the answers to any of those questions.
That's where
we just want to make sure that our staff will be protected, and somebody who is not recently been exposed to coronavirus will not be exposing our staff to coronavirus. So if somebody does not have access to those questions for them to answer, our staff will be able to read those questions to them. And the simple question is, have you reviewed these questions then? And do you feel that you are eligible to participate in curbside pickup? If somebody answers no to one of those questions, we can't prevent them from participating in curbside pickup. That is why we are doing everything we can to minimize and eliminate the contact between our staff and the public during this time, and also minimize the contact between our materials and our staff once the materials are returned to us.
The reason I'm asking this, because you'll have a name of the individual when they call in, because they'll have to have a record of who goes out. And
yes,
if they don't want to answer that question, it is a HIPAA violation to our staff. So our staff has to be totally confidential on any of this when they answer that because of HIPAA.
And that,
because you don't have to give out your medical information to anybody
correct,
except your provider.
Correct, which is why we're asking people, have you reviewed those questions?
Okay,
we don't want to know the answers to those questions.
Okay, that's fine then. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Councillor Barnzelli.
Thank you, Mayor. How will they get into the library? Will that be finished by Monday?
No, this is curbside recycling. The library continued to be closed.
Oh.
And the book drop-off will be in,
that's all.
As is in your budget, as is outlined in your packet.
Have they?
Could you talk a little bit closer to the mic so Pam can hear you?
Is there a date that they came up with for completion of it?
We are currently about 1 week ahead of schedule for the library entrance project. Right now, the target completion date is the 20th of June. So okay, that would be the Friday after the staff does return. Our curbside pickup will be beginning that Monday. We've already discussed with the contractor how we could provide the curbside pickup for the public and not negatively impact the construction project. Even after the project is initially done, that does not necessarily mean the doors to the library will swing wide open and the public will get to rush in. We are going to have to do, like everything else, these phased-in steps of reopening.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So we'll just direct staff to do the.
Yep, I just want to make sure everybody was okay with the process because it did come up at personnel that we were asked Brian to prepare information. So I just want to make sure everybody had seen it and that there was no questions or that we were able to answer any questions that council members had.
So as an administrative decision moving forward with a plan, a motion isn't required.
Correct.
Just an information to the council. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.
And I trust Brian will work on the press release for that and all the information about curbside. Right, Brian? Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving back onto the agenda to number 3, the quote for asbestos suspension for Midway Motel. We were notified again that the demolition grant for the Midway Motel was declined. We did not get it. However, I got a phone call from IRRB so that we cannot give you your demolition grant at this time. but maybe we could help you out with your asbestos. So they did indicate that they have $17,000 they can give us for asbestos inspection and remediation. We have a quote in our packet from NTS for $11,100. Is that $11,182.50 for asbestos inspection at the Midway Motel?
And there's $17,000 left in the contingency, and did the...
Once the inspection's completed, we'll have to have it abated, and we won't know that abatement dollar amount until we have the inspection completed.
Right. So what is the cost to us?
$11,182.50.
And then we could hopefully
Then
potentially
this
recover?
combined with the abatement dollar amount would be $17,000 funded by IRRB.
Okay.
We're estimating, speaking with Bill Hennis yesterday, who's been doing this for a long time, he estimates the abatement would probably be about $10,000, so it's probably looking at about $22,000 total for asbestos remediation. We're anticipating a grant from IRRR for $17,000, so that would make city responsibility of $5,000.
Okay.
Approximately.
So bottom line on that $5,000, I know the question is coming, so I might as well ask it. Where's that $5,000 coming from?
That's a great question, and I have to ask Sherry that question.
So I would ask Sherry that question, and I know that, you know, I mean, yeah, we have to come up with $5,000, but we don't want to lose the opportunity for the $17,000 grant from the IRRB, you know, which is pending, you know. So Sherry, can you give us a little information and speak closer to the mic so Pam can hear you? And how would we overcome the difference between what's asbestos and the an inspection moves forward, that additional $5,000? Where could that come from?
We could take it out of the contingency fund, and yes, this has been a hot topic. We did check into the balance, and we're still okay. $5,000 can come out of there.
Okay, thank you very much, Sherry.
How about out of the Economic Development Fund? Do I have anything left in there?
You do.
So maybe the $5,000 can come out of there too?
Yeah, so as long as we can track it.
Yeah.
So we have two options for bridging this gap, is one through the Economic Development Fund or through the contingency fund. But the funds would be available to meet the requirements of this. So, okay, let's, Councillor Freely.
I would make the motion to move forward with the quote for the asbestos inspection and to get moving on that project. It's the first step, and it lets the developers know that we're moving forward as we are able and can afford.
A motion by Councillor Freely to move forward with the asbestos inspection for the Midway Motel. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Councillor Baraboo. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Paulson, any further discussion on that motion?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beyondich?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Pam, did you get that motion?
I just want to clarify, that is for the NTS process. That resolution is the one you're adopting right now, correct?
Yes, for the asbestos
Approving. Okay.
Yes, thank you. All right, thank you. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we authorize staff to apply and accept the grant from the IRRB.
A move by Councillor Johnson to adopt the resolution accepting funds for the abatement of asbestos of the Midway Motel from the IRRB in the amount of $17,000. Is there support? Support by Councillor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Paulson?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Beyondich?
No, thank you.
Okay. Pam, did you get that motion?
Did you hear me?
No. Did you get that motion?
Oh, yes, I did. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. That was item number 4. And thank you very much for Councilor Johnson for jumping to that one and just taking care of business. And now we're down to item number 8, proposal for purchase of city-owned property by Essentia Health. And this portion of the meeting may be closed as per Minnesota statute 13D05, subdivision 3.
So I would ask for a motion from the council to close this. This is a recommendation. We do have a closed meeting on this. So I'm looking for a motion to close for under item 8, proposal for the purchase. Moved by Councilor Freelieb. Is there support?
I'll support.
Okay, support by Councilor Paulson to close the meeting for discussion for the proposal for the purchase of city-owned property by Essentia Health. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are now closing the meeting for discussion of item number 8 on the agenda. The proposal for the purchase of the city-owned property by Essentia Health. There's some significant discussion by staff and by the city council. And so, and recommendations and information provided to us by our city attorney, Brian Lindsay. So Brian, or I guess I'm looking for a motion from the council on if any action steps need to be taken as a result of this discussion in closed session. Councilor Bearable.
Yep. Mayor and fellow councilors, I will move that we accept the Essentia Health Virginia, or I guess it'd be the whole Essentia Health Corporation's acceptance of a proposal for, I can't remember the exact amount, $86,100 plus closing costs. And that's a simple motion, no additions, and Brian can work out other things with them prior to the council meeting.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Councilor Baraboo to agree to the purchase price of the sale of the hospital to Essentia in the amount of $86,100. Is there support? Plus closing costs, excuse me, $86,100 plus closing costs. Is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to that motion?
I will hesitantly second that motion.
Councilor Johnson hesitantly seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Johnson?
I think it does need to be noted that I have a lot of reservations, but feel that this is our only option at this time as we're moving forward with this.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Any further discussion on the motion, Councilor Paulson?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Councilor Beyondich? Councilor Beyondich?
I'm sorry. I will also echo Councilor Johnson's comment on that. I will go forward, but very reluctantly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Pam, did you get the motion?
Yes, I did, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Freely.
So just to be clear, this is to offer the building for $86,000, no other contingency. Or, I mean.
Yeah. Is to
and
agree
then
to the
any
purchase.
other components to that contract will be separate from that?
Separately negotiated.
After the fact?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that that makes sense.
Well, that's what we discussed that in closed session. That was the concern that I had. You know, what is the incentive to discuss this after we agree to the purchase price of this facility?
I guess we're assuming that if they accept the $86,000, that's our assurance that they're going to move forward with what we want to have happen in this community.
Okay, let's thank you, Councilor Freedom. Brian Lindsay, our city attorney. Brian.
Thank you, Mayor. And what we could do is and what I anticipate we're going to do is just move the final approval, final authorization to this coming meeting next Tuesday. And then at that point, hopefully we can have some additional details about a potential ancillary agreement.
Thank you. So we're moving this forward to the next council meeting. So once again, moved and supported, and supported to approve the sale of the hospital to Essentia Health for $86,100 plus closing costs. Is there any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Councillor Paulson, was that an aye?
That was an aye. Thank you.
Okay, an aye for an aye. Okay, we're good. Okay, all those in favor, all opposed? Anyone? No opposition. Motion carries. Thank you.
That is all I have on the agenda, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnson, any additional items on their other items of concern?
Yes, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank our public safety officials for the great job they did this week with communication overall, and want to clarify that the temporary curfew did expire and it will not be tonight. Is that correct?
Correct. It expired at 6 a.m. this morning.
And a shout out to our residents and the citizens of the General Iron Range for doing it right and making us proud.
Yes, thank you very much. And I hope to make a formal announcement, and I would ask you to echo the same thing at the council meeting moving forward. There's a lot of components that went into that part of the planning process, in which I, unfortunately had to be a part of. So we'll echo those comments again at the council meeting. So thank you, Councillor Johnson. Is there any further items that want to come before the Council of Committee of the Whole before we adjourn? Councillor Paulson, any further information to disseminate before we adjourn the Committee of the Whole meeting?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beyondich?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
Councillor Baraboo.
Yeah. Do we want to discuss the notice we got from St. Louis County recycling and all that stuff about their additional tax deal on that increase to $52 and something a ton? Or do we want to wait till the council meeting, just put it on the agenda? This is going to cost us more probably than our increase that we authorized. When you look at that additional tax, and maybe we should try to see if they can exempt that tax through the state.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to have that added to our council meeting, maybe.
We could, because I don't have all the information to consider. I don't think any of us do.
No, other than the letter that they stated, it was a little confusing, that letter that came from
right. So
from Mark St. Lawrence.
So I mean, the question is, do we discuss it at the next committee of the whole meeting or the council meeting? Britt?
Either one would work fine.
Okay, well, we could put it on the council agenda. That's going to probably add some significant discussion and additional time at the council meeting level. But we could add it to the council agenda. Okay, anything else to come before the committee of the whole meeting before we adjourn? Thank you, everybody. We stand adjourned to our next council meeting. Everybody have a great day.